Good day, Sifu, Brother Joe Huang, Hualien Dharma team, and brothers and sisters around the globe. Before we hear a review of Wondrous Lotus Sutra, let us pay our respects for these teachings and explanations to the Buddha and Master Cheng Yen by making 3 sincere bows. Please rise. Palm together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Sifu who could join us today. Karen.
Okay, thank you very much, and good day, good morning to everybody, and good day to all the people in different time zones. Once again, we're gathered here for this Lotus review, Lotus Sutra review. And as we do this for every week, we're hoping to be able to gain some insight into all the Dharma and all the stories that were told by Master Cheng Yen in the past week. She spends about an hour every day, other than the lunar 1st and lunar 15th, explaining and also going in depth into the Lotus Sutra. And we hope that in the next 30 minutes, we were able to go in deeper on some of the key aspects of the past week, the lessons from the past week, and also to put together and combine it with our real current world events, so that we could really see that the sutra isn't just something that was written for the people in the past. It was written in the past, but it was not written for only the people in the past, but also for the people in our present time, which is their future. And it's actually for all people of all ages, of all past, present, and future. So that is what our review is going to be. And I am the presenter, Joe, and I'm very happy and glad to be here. Last week, I couldn't make it, and I'm sure as Brother Yu Ping had mentioned, that it was due to the flash flood that we had, the Taiwan flood in different parts of Taiwan. And last week, but thanks to the U.S. team and thanks to our team, thanks to the team that was making this, we had the videos. So even though I wasn't here, but I was able to saw the recording, and I always try to go back to all the recordings so that I could remember and I could go back to what was said, that we could improve in any way that we could. And even though it could be a slow process to improve, but this is something that we could always look for to try to improve on the experience. So last week, previously, Brother Yu Ping had shared about the flood and that we should always be prepared. And once again today, in the morning Dharma talk, Master once again talked about a impending, assumed to come monsoon warning once again that will bring ample rain, a lot of rainfall. Would it be as serious, as problematic as the last time? Perhaps not. Perhaps it will. We don't know. However, the lesson here is that we should always be prepared, and we should be vigilant, and we should not overlook and look anything lightly just because there has always been a lot of monsoon, always been a lot of rain in Taiwan. So always be prepared. And also last week, Brother Yu Ping had mentioned about the vow. And this is a very important aspect of the entire peaceful practices, is that through this vow that we are able to overcome all the difficulties, the most difficult of all the challenges. And then Brother Yu Ping mentioned about the metaphor of the king, the wheel turn, where the king represents our heart, our mind, and any affliction arises, much like the lords or the other underlings of the king that are rising up in rebellion. And these are metaphorically the afflictions that is trying to hinder our heart to realize the true Buddha nature. And so the metaphor of the king says that there will be battles between the good and the bad, battles between the affliction and wisdom. And eventually when the king wins out, they will give out rewards, the rewards for the soldiers, rewards for the ones that have gained merit. And such reward is what we feel and what we get in terms of the peace and the tranquility, or the reward of the praises that other people give us when we do something that is right. So that's what previously what Brother Yopin had covered. So today, this week, we are going to cover 3 more topics. And these are how I call the 3 topics. Number 1, how deep goes Dharma? Number 2, how deep goes compassion? And number 3, hidden Dharma treasure. These are 3 of my very, I would say, personal feelings about the past week. What Master had said and how I go about trying to understand and trying to, my way of explaining and also integrating this Dharma into myself. So let's begin. How deep goes Dharma? How deep? And that's the question that we always want to ask ourselves. Dharma is something that is useful, or I hope you find it to be useful. And it's not useful only to be able to, say that, oh, I'm learning Dharma, or say that I am part of the Dharma practitioner. But rather, it is something that's useful in our everyday lives, in our dealing with everything around us, whether it's people, things, objects, or any dealings with anything. But how deep does it go? So in the past week, there had been a story that says that there were all these fire hydrants that after the country of France broke the temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, that over 300 fire hydrants were vandalized, were broken deliberately by the people, so that when they break it, supposedly they were there and they were hooked up to the water source, so that when there's a fire that breaks out, the fire truck comes over and they were able to hook onto the water right away, and they were able to put out the fire. Now, what happened was, when it was so hot, and this happens a lot actually in the States as well, but it wasn't purposely, most of it wasn't purposely vandalized, but it could be just malfunctioning. But what happened was they would just break this fire hydrant or open it, and so the water, with all the water pressure that's inside, just streams out, and so it spreads out like this. And people on the streets, people in France or people in these regions, they were very happy. They ran over and they were just almost like showering in a way, because it was really hot. Okay, so Master spoke of this story that took place in France, and was trying to spoke of this story in France, and so that we could try to see this story for what's more than just the story itself. So what was it? Well, Master says everyone was there, and let's see. Okay, everyone wants to enjoy the coolness of the water. Okay, everyone wants to enjoy the coolness of the water, but the coolness of the water, the coolness is only temporary. Once the water is no more, all the water would have been wasted. They would just be wasted. They would be wasted and not retained. Yet for those that are thirsty, there's no more water. In another word, Master is trying to tell us that what happened is that this water that comes out of the fire hydrant is actually temporary, giving you a temporary relief of coolness, of chillness. However, when the water is no more, there's no more water. All this water is just wasted and they are not retained. But for those people that really need this water, whether they are thirsty or whether there's a fire that broke out, there's no more water. And what does that mean? How does it in response to the question, how deep goes the Dharma? Well, we always know that Dharma is analogous to water. Dharma as water. And we know that the Dharma can be used to alleviate affliction, to bring peace and joy. And that is, in fact, what we have been learning in the chapter on the peaceful and joyous practices. However, even if the Dharma was used to alleviate the affliction, to bring peace and joy, there's also, if the Dharma itself is not retained, it is quote unquote wasted. Just like the water was indeed used to cool down the temperature of the person. In the Sutra of Infinite Meanings, the Dharma was mentioned as a way to fan, because the world is so overheated with all the affliction. So it fans away all the heat that is caused by the affliction. However, this story that broke out in France, and the way the master said it, was that even if that this water was indeed used to cool down the temperature, the water is not retained. And when somebody really need to use it, they cannot use it anymore. This water is not retained and it's gone. The same way goes Dharma. Even if the Dharma was used to alleviate affliction, to bring peace and joy, if it is somehow not retained, if it's not in your heart, then it will be wasted. It is gone. It is no more. But how do we retain this? What does that mean? So how deep goes the Dharma? So how deep? I remember I shared with you before on several occasions that Dharma should be merged with our, like breathing. Right now, everybody's breathing without knowing that they are breathing. And that is a good sign. That is a good sign. If you're knowingly breathing, then as Master said, then there is some trouble with our respiration, because we're breathing unknowingly. It's part of us already. And that's what it means that the Dharma completely merges with our life, using the Dharma without knowing it. However, I think it goes deeper. I no longer just think that it's just like breathing. However, we must keeping it in mind, keeping this Dharma in mind every second and in every thought. That's how deep the Dharma goes. It's no longer just, maybe for the intro, maybe for me at the beginning, it's how do you merge the Dharma without knowing it. However, as all and mind is always fleeting, it is so fast changing every second, every thought. The most important part is to keep this guarded, to keep this Dharma in your mind for every second and in every thought. Is it possible? Well, it depends on how deep the Dharma goes. If it's, I find myself when I'm driving, my mind is focused on driving, but there are thoughts that comes in and out. Oh, there's a red car. There's a yellow car. I like that car. Oh, I'm passing the store. Do I want to go and stop by and buy something to eat or to drink? What am I going to do later? What am I going to do right now? Other than driving, maybe I want to listen to some music. But with all these thoughts that comes in, are we retaining the Dharma? Are we retaining this particular Dharma that while it's unknowingly intertwined with our life, just like breathing, but is it also in our mind every second and in every thought? And that's something that Master had mentioned about keeping the Dharma in our heart, in our mind for every second, every split second, and every thought. And that's how deep the Dharma should go. And that is actually connected to our next topic. How deep goes compassion? Compassion, it's a word that associates with kindness, with love, with the unable to bear to see other people suffer, and the willingness to do something to relieve the suffering. Compassion. How deep is it? I wanted to share with you what I was doing last week when I wasn't here. Brother Yoping has shared that we had this coordination center, and that within this coordination center, we were gathering information from the disaster, the affected area, and we would do a report for Master. We would do the statistics. We would try to gather some intelligence. These intelligence include where are the disasters, what is happening with the government, what is the government doing, what is the local municipality doing, and what is our volunteers doing, and what we should do, and where are all the resources. All these are compiled in a matrix of a lot of information. And I was part of the team that gathered the intelligence. We are the team that gather these information so that when it comes time to make the decision, we have all the available resources and available information to make the best options possible, to provide the best recommendation, so that we're hoping that we will make the right decision for the right reasons and all for the right conditions. So this is what happened last week. We were there gathering all this information. As you can see from the pictures, indeed, the flooding was, the inundation was really throughout many, many different parts of Taiwan, just in the north, but it's also in the central and in the south. For many of you in Malaysia, I know probably that you have had your experiences with flooding, probably annually, probably even more than once a year. So this probably to you seems to be something that is trivial. However, for the people in Taiwan, yes, we do have a lot of rain, but we don't get this much rain and we don't get this much flooding all the time. So it's something that would be difficult. And for me, it was difficult. It wasn't difficult, but it was something that is also my work. So I was dedicated and focused. And while the information was, there was a lot of people that was in, working in and out, running in and out, all the information were flying in and out. There was a lot of disinformation. There was a lot of things that were maybe right, maybe not so right. There were a lot of discussion going on. So I was focused in getting my numbers. I was focused on getting all the reports done. And that was my occupation. That was my responsibility, and that was my work. And because of that, I have been so busy and focused on getting what I needed to put together this report. I had forgotten that all the numbers actually represent countless stories. That each number, whether it's 100, 200, 1,000, or 5,000, it's not just a number, but represent many, many touching stories or heartbroken stories that come together to make this number. But my focus at the time was only to get this thing done, was only to get the report done, to get all these things done as possible. I felt I lost it. I felt I lost my vow. That at the time, all that I was doing, all that I had time for was I had only had time to put together the report, gather the numbers, run some analyses, and that was it. What happened to all the touching stories? What happened to the lives of the people that were lost, or the lives of the people that were affected? What happened to my compassion? I was doing it as a job. I wasn't doing it out of compassion. I was doing it out of necessity that was required of me because it was my responsibility. But compassion didn't go along with it. It was only the sense of duty. It was only a sense of responsibility that propelled me in the wee hours of the night to continue to crunch and churn out the numbers and the statistics. But it wasn't the sense of compassion that I needed to do this. So when was it lost? When did I lose? When did it begin that I no longer was thinking about these people, but I was only thinking about my job, which was to compile the numbers? And it was bit by bit. It was over time. It was every second, every thought, every split second over time and without knowing. Remember what I said before about how deep goes the Dharma? It was at the end, it wasn't just without knowing, breathing but not knowing. It was more. Every split, every second, every thought, the Dharma is in your mind. And that's how we're able to retain it. But rather, I had it as the fire hydrant, the water. It comes onto me, it showers me, it gave me chill, it gave me the coolness. But when I needed it the most, it wasn't, I didn't drink it. So I was thirsty, but it was bit by bit over time. Without knowing, the water that the Dharma that was covering on me slowly evaporates. That's how it was lost. So without knowing, I didn't even realize I had lost that, the sense of compassion when I was overtaken by the sense of duty and responsibility. And Master had talked about the 3 ages of Dharma. The ages of the right Dharma, the ages of the semblance Dharma, and the age of the degenerate Dharma, which means at the time of the Buddha, there were 500 years of the Dharma that was the right Dharma, meaning everybody, every practitioner, they still practice the Dharma, they still practice the principle the way that it was supposed to be. Then it comes the next 1,000 year, which is the age of the semblance Dharma, which it still has the form, it still looks like the right Dharma, but the center, the core of it is no more. And finally, we live in right now, the age of degenerate Dharma, which is after the form still looks like it, but after 1,000 years of the semblance Dharma, we are entering into 10,000 years of degenerate Dharma, which is even the form no longer looks like the right things anymore, let alone the true core of all this. Just like the 3 ages of the Dharma. The ages of the right Dharma is 500 years. The period is 500 years. The age of the semblance Dharma is 1,000. The age of the degenerate Dharma is 10,000. However, the conversion from one age to the other isn't overnight. It did not go from 500 years of 499 years, 364 days, and 23 hours and 59 minutes and 59 seconds. And then when the second ticks in onto the 500 years, then all of a sudden, whatever that was right becomes semblance. It didn't happen this way. It was a slippery slope where it goes from the right Dharma when the Buddha was still in the world and teaching. It goes from there and slides slowly, ever so slowly, without anyone realizing, without anyone being aware that it was slowly sliding, and who knows? All of a sudden, no one realized it. No one knew that there was a change in the age. But on the 500 years, on the 501st year, the first day of 501st year, somebody said, oh, it begins the age of semblance Dharma. But the truth is, it has been decaying. It has been degenerating every day, every second, because it was lost bit by bit without knowing. Because we failed to keep the Dharma in every thought, in every split second. Because we failed to keep that deep within us, but we just leave it on the surface. So bit by bit, it gets evaporated. I wanted to show this picture with no offense to any of the people in here. This, to me, we actually have something very similar in our headquarters. We have a banner that's in the back. We have a tables form, and everybody in here sits on a chair and they have their laptops with them. They all have their titles and they all have their responsibilities and they all have their seats, position, responsibilities, duties, titles, and everything is there. And to me, if there is no compassion, even if we have all these forms, wouldn't this be just like the age of semblance Dharma? We have all the forms Everything looks to be right, but we are losing that compassion bit by bit. So when was it lost? Unaware, unknowingly. I was focused doing my work, churning out the numbers, but I had lost what was essential in doing my work, which was compassion. And boy, let me tell you, it was very easy to lost it. Because if I didn't keep it in my mind every second, if I didn't keep it together with me, every split thought, then it would just be lost bit by bit. So how deep goes Dharma and how deep goes compassion? They go hand in hand. To make sure the Dharma isn't just like the water that cools you and eventually evaporates. You must make sure it has to be merged with you unknowingly, just like breathing. But at the same time, you need to keep it in your thoughts every moment, every thought, every split second. So even though everybody sits there, and like I said, I don't use this picture to say these people don't do their job. That's not what I meant. Isn't this just like we have all the forms, we have all the banners, all the things in place, and everybody was doing what they're supposed to do. But if there is no compassion, if there is no spirit inside, then all of this, we would truly have entered the age of semblance, Dharma. And even worse, not knowingly, we are in it without knowing. So these volunteers, they put together these banners. That's wonderful. They're doing what they're supposed to do, helping the people, putting out the numbers. That is wonderful. Most importantly, don't let this be the age of semblance, Dharma. Let this be the age of right Dharma. So if the age is slipping one day at a time, bit by bit, 1 second, one thought at a time, slipping ever so slowly, I think we could also gain it slowly and put it backwards. And that is the tug of war that we are in right now. If we're able to keep compassion and Dharma in our heart, every thought, every mind, then we will be able to win this tug of war and continue to make sure that we do not enter the next phase, the next stage. So what separates the three ages? As I mentioned, compassion. And it's very simple. That spirit, the core essence, is this love, unconditional compassion, love for all the people that are suffering, trying our best to relieve the suffering. So, and I want to share this because this had become very real to me, okay? To some people, the disaster becomes real when we begin to see the pictures and videos. When we begin to see the videos on the TV, when we begin to see the news footage, when we begin to hear the sounds, we begin to see the stories, it becomes real. So some people, the disaster becomes real when we recall what we have experienced before. Flood in Taiwan. Yes, we have had flood before. And then you begin to recall all the memories, and then that becomes very real. You understand what they're going through because you have recalled their memory and you lived it. So then you understand them, and that becomes a real disaster. To some others, the disaster becomes real when we are right there in the disaster. These people are right there in the disaster. To these three people that I had just mentioned, disaster becomes real when they hear it, when they see it, or when they recall in their memory and it becomes real, or it becomes real when they're right there in the disaster. If you see or hear the disaster, you become aware. If you see or hear the Dharma, you become aware. That's what we call hearers. Master was talking about the three types of people, the practitioners today, the hearers. They hear the Dharma, they begin to think, and they begin to understand. We hear the disaster, the news of disaster. We see the news footage. We see the people losing their loved ones or losing their homes and their belongings. Compassion begins to come out. Love becomes to come out. We become to donate and we become to want to do something. We are hearers also. To some others, they recall from their memory because they have the condition and the affinity to know about this. To those people, they are the solitary realizers because they had the condition and affinity of knowing this before. They do not need to be there. They do not need to hear or see it. They already know what it is. And these are the solitary realizers. To those people, they become real. The disaster becomes real when they're right there. Third type, the bodhisattvas. They are right there. It's very real to them. It is no longer just something that you see in the stories. It's no longer something that lives in your memory. The time is now. The place is here, right now, right here, in front of me. Do something about it. That's the bodhisattvas. So these are the three types. And I feel like for how deep does the compassion go? Are you the type that will see the stories and then you would inspire your love, inspire your compassion, and your empathy? Or are you the type that when you know about this, you don't need to see the pictures or hear the sounds or see the video, but then you can recall from memory, yes, I have been through the cleanup and I understand how this feels. And therefore, this is truly suffering and I understand. So my love goes out to them. My compassion goes out to them. And I'm full of love and I want to do something for them. If that's you, then that's solitary realizing. But if all of that combined together, and then you realize that you want to do more and you need to be right there, and that is the true thing, it's not what you hear and see from third person, from the news, from the TV, and it's not about your memory about past events, it's about being right there, then that's bodhisattva. And our master is different. I think our master goes beyond what we just talked about. She just thinks about these people. And she didn't see the story, she didn't see the pictures, but she knows about the flood. And that was enough. She didn't need to be right there. She didn't need to have past. She just knows. She just sad, sorrow, and wanting to do something. And from the sadness and sorrow, comes strength to want to do something. So how deep is our compassion? Who are you? Where do you rank yourself? Do you want to be see or hear to inspire compassion? Or maybe seeing and hearing isn't even enough to inspire compassion? That's what I was. I was focused on doing my job. And I had forgot, even when I hear the stories, I had overlooked the most essential part of compassion. And this is our teacher, our instructor, our guide to guide us so that we don't forget the essence. Lastly, I wanted to share with you, and today I'm a little bit over time because I wasn't here last week and I wanted to talk more. So last part, I want to talk about the hidden Dharma treasure. And I'm sure that in the past few days, we have spoken about the analogy of the wheel turning king. And even though that there were a lot of soldiers or a lot of captains and generals that had made a lot of contribution to the campaign against, all the other kings or all the other afflictions, and you have received a lot of rewards, the Buddha in the section talks about will not preach the Lotus Sutra until when the time is right. And also there's a very precious jewel that's in the top knot that the king does not give away. And in the sutra, the Buddha goes in depth to explain why. If you give it away when they're not ready, it's people will be like amazed and people will be shocked and they would be able to not be able to accept this. And for me, when I read this, I believe the sutra 100%. I believed what the Buddha was saying. I believe what the master is saying. But I asked myself this question. I ask, so does that mean our master also hides this jewel somewhere because we're not ready? If she deems us not ready, we should be hiding this somewhere because we're not ready? Why does the Buddha have to hide something? Why does it have to be a hidden treasure? And does our master hide something? And while I was going into this internal battle about, I don't think our master hides anything. I think master tells us everything that we need to know and everything there is about Dharma, right? While I goes into this internal battle, something that came to my mind, an idea, a flash of a ray of light, I think. And this is how I was able to justify. I don't think anything needs to be justified, but for me, I would like to understand something, to really believe it, to feel it, to see it, to understand it, so I can firmly grab onto it. So, is there a secret hidden treasure? I don't believe so. I believe the Buddha, just like our master, teaches the Dharma as is. We just don't understand. But there's no holding back. Every moment, our master, just like the Buddha, preaches the Dharma, the principles, with no holding back. No holding back. But you would ask, but this is in the sutra. These are the words that come out of the sutra. So are you telling me that the sutra is lying? No, I don't think it's lying. It's telling the truth. Dharma has always been out there. If you go back to the parable of the medicinal herbs, Buddha said that the Dharma, the true teaching, is just like the rain. The rain will come down, and all of us with different capacities. The big trees will hold more rainwater. The small grass will hold less. But it will come down nonetheless to all. There is no hiding. You cannot withhold a certain part of the moisture and say, I don't want to rain. It just rains down. The Dharma has always been there. The Dharma has always been preached. The problem is it has always been ignored. Just like the water that comes out of the fire hydrant. It goes on, temporarily gives us relief, and then it goes away. You listen to it, and you think you got it, but you didn't get it. It's not deep. You didn't quench your thirst. It just gives you a temporary relief. It has always been ignored. At least in my part, has always been. Master gave us all the Dharma and the teachings, but we have always ignored, and we thought we were able to retain it. But there was so little part that were actually retained that was mostly ignored. So, what does Buddha do? What does our master do? The master says, or the sutra says, now the Lotus Sutra is the supreme sutra, is the king of sutras. And now there is this very, very precious jewel that I'm about to give to you that I would not give you in any other moment. So isn't there conflicting? There's no conflict. Because without saying this, would you cherish it? Would you think that this is supreme if I didn't tell you that this is the king of sutra? If I didn't tell you that this jewel is the most precious, it's in the top knot, hidden for all these years, after 42 years of preaching by the Buddha, he tells you, I have never given this away. I have never even mentioned about the word Lotus Sutra. I've never told you about all these teachings. And now I'm giving it to you because it's the most supreme. People hear it and they say, wow, I'm going to stay and listen to the most supreme because it's the most supreme. And that's what happened. So I think the Dharma has always been out there, but this is just another skillful means for us to see that, please listen. This is important. Don't just listen and let it just evaporate. Please, this is important. Treat it like it's the king of the sutra. Treat it like it's the most precious jewel that's going to give to you. This is the seed that the volunteers from the central Taiwan came back about 2 weeks ago. They gave to the master. And master specifically said this in the Dharma talk, that it was like 800,000 or whatever. It was very valuable. And master says, this particular seed, okay, in that garden, in the park, people just kick it around, right? You just kick it around. Nobody really cared about the seed. But these volunteers took their time, pick it up, clean it up, and made a little set. So you can set the seed on top of it, and all of a sudden, this becomes very valuable. And you know what makes it even more valuable? When this was given out by master. So everybody was so happy. Oh, I got this seed from the master. Little did everyone else know, well, I mean, they knew themselves too, that this seed was everywhere. That was everywhere on the ground, in the park, and no one picked it up. But when you picked it up, you put it on this very ornate, this set. You put it on this pedestal that it just seems to be more valuable, and all of a sudden is valuable. And all of a sudden, it was given out by the master and say, this is the seed, symbolizing Bodhi seed. You are the seed. Then everybody thinks, yes, this is going to be my heirloom. This is going to be the treasure of my entire family, my bloodline. What's the difference? Because without telling you how important it is so easy for us to overlook how important it really is. That's what Dharma is. If we don't keep it to our mind every single second, it will evaporate. It will just evaporate without us knowing. So in order for us to keep it in our mind every second, Master, as well as in the past 2,500 years ago, it was Buddha that says, I am now giving you this treasure that you have never gotten before. Please cherish it. Little do we know, it was actually everywhere, all around us. If we choose to cherish it, then it will be treasure, but we chose to ignore it. So that's my sharing for today. And I hope that with my personal experience, it was a very, very difficult week for me, as it was a lot of pain, growing pain, to see how inadequate I am in terms of compassion, in terms of how Dharma goes in me. But I hope that through this, we can all come to realize that it's not just, we don't want the Dharma just on our skin. It's okay to be on the skin, but we need to keep it in our heart and retain it at all times. So that's my sharing for today. Thank you for listening. And I know I'm over time, but it just felt like a long week. And trust me, if you tell me that it was only a week ago that the rain got here, it felt like a month. And it was very difficult. It was draining, but it was full of joy in that I got to learn something. It's not just about helping people, but also I got to do some growing to do. So thank you all for listening. And I think we will now open up to to everybody for the sharing. Thank you. Sister Xiaoxin, take over. Thank you.
And Brother Joe for the wonderful sharing. We are very grateful. I'm so sorry because today we are supposed to have a recorded sharing, but we could not get it in time. Maybe we'll hear it next week. I think the brother, he tried to record it, but the result was not so satisfactory. So we decided to have it next week. Just timely. We are very grateful to Brother Joe for sharing such wonderful story about the fire hydrant, about the seed. Okay, anyone have any questions? You can post it online. Otherwise, we will return to the Q&A. If there is no, maybe Brother Joe, your side can take over for the Q&A.
Okay. So we're going to go through the Q&A right now. And so I think there are 3 questions. And the first is, who is more difficult to be enlightened? Small practitioners or person with afflictions? Okay, that's the first question. And the second question, there are some experienced commissioners, often self-righteous, have this thought, I am more experienced than you, and you should listen to me. As a new activity group commissioner or leader, and I don't think we want to start thinking about who is asking this question. But as a new activity group commissioner or leader, how do you deal with the experienced ones? Okay. All right. Next question. A new volunteer mentioned that she encountered unfriendly treatments from seniors and wished to withdraw. And I have already spoken with her many times, yet cannot change her mind. I wanted to give up, but feel unfortunate that she's quite enthusiastic what to do. And I think when the word seniors here is mentioned, I think it's also talking about the experienced volunteers. I see that these questions are beginning to surface, and these questions are, and indeed, these are the problems that we face. These are the problems that we face, and we should definitely try to overcome that. So let's go on to the first question. Who is more difficult to be enlightened? Small practitioners or person with affliction? Let me just quickly share that even for small practitioners, there are always going to be afflictions. The affliction is only for someone who doesn't have it. Is the only person that doesn't have affliction is the Buddha, who's already completely free of attachments to any slightest affliction. Even the Bodhisattva, there is still some attachment. There's still something that's still there, not quite completely, and not yet there. And that is why all the supreme principles are only known to the Buddha and the Buddhas only, not the Bodhisattvas, not the hearers, not the solitary realizers. And so when you say, who is more difficult? Then let me ask you this. Is it difficult for you to do a long division? Is it difficult for you to do a long multiplication? Is it difficult to you to do the addition and multiplication of 2 digits, 3 digits, and 4 digits? Is it difficult for you? To you, it is not difficult, or I hope it is not difficult. For most of us, just like, is it difficult for you to ride a bicycle or to drive a car? It is not difficult at all. However, to a person who is just learning, to a person who just began their arithmetic or their algebra or their math, addition will be very difficult. When they finally master addition, they were moving on to multiplication and then eventually division and long division. It will be very difficult. But to you, you would look at this and say, well, why would it be difficult? Isn't it just adding 2 numbers? Isn't it just multiplication and division? So when you say, who is more difficult to be enlightened? Is it difficult in terms of you? Or is it difficult in terms of them? For you, whatever that you face is the most difficult. Just like the multiplication, it will be difficult for the people who haven't learned it. So how is it difficult? Right now, if you ask me, is it difficult to not drink alcohol? I would tell you, yeah, it's very simple. Just don't drink it. Is it difficult to stop smoking? Absolutely. It's not difficult at all. So easy. Just don't smoke. But tell that to the person who needs to stop smoking. They would tell you it's the most difficult thing in the world. So who is it difficult? The difficult isn't in the amount or the task that is in front of you. The difficulty lies in how the person deals with that particular challenge. And if there is a will, if you make the vow, then there is a way to overcome that difficulty. And then none of the difficulties will be difficult. None of the challenges will pose any difficulties to you. So the answer, it will be less difficult if the person is determined, and also if the person has the right people in the environment to push, to propel, to guide this person toward that direction. So you need all the conditions and affinities to be with you. It's not for us to say, oh yeah, it's so easy to stop smoking. Just tell them to stop smoking. How difficult is it going to be? Then you are just being subjective. We have to be objective because everyone sees problems differently. Everyone have their own different problems. So I hope I don't want to give the answer directly because there isn't one, but rather I think it's a different perspective to look at this problem. Okay, so the next question, we would have Brother Youping here to answer. Okay, so okay.
Thank you so much, and I think Brother Joe says very, very well. Really, every of us, we all have our own homeworks, and each of our homeworks is different, but each of our homework is the most difficult to us all, and it is our homework that we need to finish our homework. And so, yes, and I wanted just to add a 2 cents word from my own understanding also. If we want to talk about a small practitioner or a person with afflictions, what's the difference between the two? I think from today Brother Joe's sharing, it made me understand better these two. At least from what I understand, a small practitioner is one that have the aim of just practicing for themselves or practicing for ourselves. Then I think when we only think about ourselves, then we are really very far from enlightenment, because it's just like what Brother Joe shared. When we are only thinking about ourselves, then we are only thinking about how to cool down our body. The water, the Dharma just came in, cool down our body, and then it just goes. It really never enter our mind, but and so our heart doesn't have compassion, and that is when we are a small practitioner, when our aim is to liberate ourselves, then we are actually pretty far from compassion. And so, and that will actually become a very big obstacle to our practice. So there's one thing that we need to be careful of, that when we practice on this Bodhisattva's path, we should really tune down on our thoughts about ourselves and so, but think more others, then we'll be better on this path. But on the other hand, a person with afflictions will be. And then for the second question, yeah, for the second question, actually I've been thinking about this for some time also. Actually, to me, I won't think there's I won't think that there's something that is I won't think in a way that the experienced one is wrong, but I would think that things that is always a learning, in that as we enter a new responsibility or a new role, we are always here to learn, to improve ourselves, to as we are practicing, to make us a better person. Then there's always there's a person that has done it and have his or her experience. And since we're here to learn, then even though the experienced one, the method, the way may not be what we thought is better, it may not be what we thought is the best way, but since we are here to learn, actually we never know because we're new to this task, then actually we are also not so sure what is the best way or the better way, or how to think through these things. Since we are here, we are new to this unknown ground, then I think maybe a better way to think about it is to try the methods of the experienced one first, since they have walked the path, they have done it, they have had successful methods before, at least in their time they have been successful. So since we're here to learn, we're new to this ground, then no matter what we thought is the way that the experienced ones, that way, whether it's good or not, I think it's better that we put the kind of judgment aside, and then just take up the spirit of learning, and then just use the method. Because actually, I also think that there's no really best method, because each method there's a pros and cons to it. So since we are learning, why not use the method that experienced one person telling us, and then feel for ourselves, experience it, and then see what's the pros and cons in it. And when we become very familiar, when we become the experienced one already, then along the way we can raise up our observations and how we thought maybe it could be better, and then we can discuss through all this with our brothers, with the brothers and sisters that we are working with, in accordance to the Dharma and the principles that we have been listening every morning. And then through the discussions, each of us will grow. So have an open heart. We are all here to learn. The experienced one is just sharing what they have walked and what they have done, and what they have, since they have done it, it must have its good points. And there's always many things that we are here to learn. So have an open heart. Follow the cause and conditions, and then I think that's how I will do it. And then because when I do it this way, I will have no grudges with anyone, and I'll always be learning. I'll be able to improve myself, and at the same time, when I gain the experience, I can also discuss when there's the good connection with people, the good relationship. There will be chances when I can share what my thoughts from the learnings, from the experiences, and what I think the master is teaching us. As we share with each other, we will both improve, and then things will also change. I think that is one of the way that we could do it. And then there'll be no grudges, there'll be no worries in our hearts, and we are still on this path all the time with not too much obstacles in our path. I think that's how we can do it. Okay, yeah, that's my thoughts. Third question. Oh, because of time. Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, so then because of time, I think the third question we'll leave it for next week. Okay, thank you so much, Sister Xiaoqing.
Cảm ơn Brother Joe and Brother Yo Ping for sharing lots of life wisdom. Thank you, Pusa, for your presence today. Hope that each of us could sustain the Dharma joy and take in another piece of Masters and Hualian love to our life. Let us please make 3 vows to the Buddha and Master Cheng Yen as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily lives. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life universal truths. First vow. Second vow. Third vow. And a bow to our beloved Sifu who could join us today. Cảm ơn. Cảm ơn everyone for your presence. Great to have you all on board today. Cảm ơn.
Okay, cảm ơn everybody. Cảm ơn.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.